I wanted to just do this video to just remind all of you to be okay with letting people go, particularly if you are dating. If you meet someone and it's just clear that they are not putting in the effort or the time or the commitment that you feel like you are, it's okay to let them go. And chances are they will fade themselves out of your life. My thing is this: if you come across a person who apparently is going through something, he did have a family emergency, you know, he was running late, he sounded anxious about that. My thing is this: if I can give an allowance for that, if I can understand that, if I can think, okay, he's going through something right now, and if I cannot take it personal that, you know, the tone of voice that he has or his attitude is different than it's ever been since I've known him, which wasn't even that long, then why do I not get that same consideration? You know, why is it that it's like this personal thing, or, oh, you just don't want to do this? Like, what happened to wanting to get to know the person? You know what I mean? And then he has said something while we were on the walkway about, oh, well, if you didn't want to do this today, you know, I wouldn't have wasted my time coming down here. And I'm just like, and I looked at him and I said, if I didn't want to meet you today, I would have told you that. We had planned to have dinner. You know, we have reservations. So I don't understand, like, what the issue is right now. So after all of that, it was just like, so the bottom line of this dating chronicle situation is just make sure it's balanced as possible. Like, if you're excusing someone's behavior because of something that they're going through based on what they told you, or you're saying, okay, well, he's this way or she's this way because this happened, if you can be considerate to take into account the issues going on in their life, expect the same in return, or at least expect the conversation. If you are that person who take others' experiences and situations into account when they act differently than how they normally are, it's okay to expect that in return. It's okay to expect an adult, he was in his 60s, to have a conversation and say, you know what, I'm just kind of stressed right now because, I had a family emergency earlier today. And, so if I seem a little off, it's not personal. It's just because of, I have this other stuff on my mind. Just have a conversation about it. And it just really was like, yo. And so I was okay with him fading out of my life. And actually, he just cut himself out of my life. And like I said, I did not reach out to him. I didn't text him, didn't call him, didn't email him, nothing. And it's just, be considerate to people. If you enjoy people being considerate to you, if you enjoy people taking, your day-to-day life into account and understanding that you may not be in a good mood because of something that has nothing to do with that other person, just be that same way towards other people. Be open-minded. Think about things. Like, is this personal? No, it's not. And also, don't take things out on someone when it has nothing at all to do with them. And that's about being self-aware. Like, why am I feeling anxious right now? Why am I feeling annoyed right now? Why am I feeling short-tempered right now? Versus just lashing out at the person in front of you. And then to cut yourself out of their life because you were in a bad mood or stressed out because of something going on in your family. And I won't even say how unfair that is, because if someone's meant to be in your life, they'll be in your life one way or another. And if they want to see themselves out, let it go. And it's best that it happens sooner rather than later. This was only the second time that we met. And so I'm glad that things do happen fairly quickly for me. And I think it's because I do prefer to meet sooner rather than later. And I do prefer a face-to-face conversation versus texting and phone. And so that I really feel like helps me as far as people coming into and exiting my life. Another situation, true story, he was like an hour, he was probably like 2 hours away. No, at least like an hour and a half away. So we found somewhere halfway to meet, which MapQuest said 45 minutes. It took me an hour. He said he got there in 40 minutes. And it was at a shopping plaza. And so I left it up to him because I didn't know anything about that area. So I said, well, you just let me know where to be and I'll be there. And so he's like, oh, let's just meet in the parking lot at IKEA. And I'm just like, okay, well, just let me have the address. And so I'll just put it in my GPS. And so as I'm driving there, I'm passing like shops and stores and restaurants and, you know, bowling places and things. Not that I would go indoor bowling right now, but well, this was in the summer also, or like in the fall. But I'm just like, there's all this stuff to do. Why did he just say like the parking lot of IKEA? So even already, I'm just like, does he know how to date? And he was like early 60s. So I'm just like, okay. And so we're standing in the parking lot and he's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know what there is to do. I'm not familiar with this area. So I do see all these stores and places around here, but you know, I don't know if they're going off for a reservation or like whatever's what. So he's like, oh, we can just go over there and walk through the mall. And I'm like, we can do that, but 15, 20 minutes tops. I need fresh air to take this mask off because of my asthma and it makes my face sweat so much. And then I'm just like, it's just really struggling for me to keep a mask on more than like 20 minutes, especially if I'm walking around doing things. And so we walked over to the mall, put the mask on, went in the mall, and he's just chit-chatting and showing me pictures on his phone and just yak, talking about his children, his family, and showing me pictures. And I'm just kind of like, in my mind, oh yeah, I'm fine, thanks for asking. And so after like 15 minutes or so, I could feel the sweat like just running down my face under the mask. And he's like, do you want to walk down here? I said, well, I need some fresh air right now. Like I'm really like hot with this mask on and I just need to take this off and get fresh air. So we go outside and we sit on a concrete slab because there were no benches or chairs outside. And it was kind of cold, but I'm like, you know, what am I going to do? I just sat in the car for an hour. My hips were sore, my knees were aching, and I'm sitting on concrete, which wasn't helping. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I did know this was going to be challenging, but I did want to meet him sooner rather than later, and so I'm here. So I feel like I was putting something into meeting this guy, putting an effort to show up and meet this dude. And so after like less than 5 minutes, he's like, well, you know, let's just go ahead and walk back to the car. And I'm like, you ready to go already? Like we walked in the mall for like 15 minutes and we've been sitting here for like 5 minutes. And he was like, well, yeah, because it seems like, you know, you're not really into it. And I'm like, I just drove an hour down here to come see you. And I had already explained to him about my chronic joint pain. And while we were walking, I was explaining to him my disability. So then I'm thinking, was he just not listening to me? And so then he said something and I made a joke. And he was like, oh, yeah, now we're getting somewhere. And I'm like, where are we going? Like, what? And then another 5 minutes or so went by and he's like, well, let's just walk back to the car because it seems like you're bored. And I'm like, I already told you like what the deal is. Like I came down here to see you and I would like to spend time to talk to you. Like I just drove an hour to get here and I'm here. And so I don't understand like what you're saying. We're not going anywhere. Like, can you explain what you mean? And he really couldn't. And so then I made a joke about something. He was like, yeah, okay, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. And I'm just like, what is up with this dude? And then he started asking me like, you know, well, would I be okay coming down to his place and watching Netflix? And I'm thinking, didn't I just meet you like half hour ago? Like in my mind, right? And I said, well, maybe after a while, but when I first meet people, I want to be out in public and spend time with that person and engage in activities with that person. And he was like, oh, okay. So like another 5 minutes goes by. So now we're at like 15 minutes sitting outside. He's like, well, let's just walk back to the car. And I'm just like I don't know like what he was expecting. And so this goes into expectations. Like when you meet people, what do you expect? And in my mind, I'm thinking like, you know, if I make a joke or if I laugh at something, he's like, oh yeah, now we're getting somewhere. And he perks up and, you know, starts smiling. And I'm just like I just didn't understand. So we're talking while we're walking back to the car. And while we're in front of my car, I'm on my feet, but I'm rocking back and forth because I was tired. And so I'm just trying to stay in motion and stay alert. And he says, well, I'm gonna let you go because it seems like you're bored. And I'm like, actually, I'm not bored. I'm like, why do you say that? He's like, oh, because, you know, you're rocking back and forth. I said, because I'm just staying in motion because I'm tired. I'm not bored. And he's like, well, I'm gonna let you go because, you know, seems like, you know, you're not really with it. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, it doesn't seem like you're interested. I said, how does it seem like I'm not interested? Like I came here and I keep telling you, I came down here to meet you. And every time you say, okay, let's go, I'm like, well, can we still just keep talking? Which should let you know that I do want to keep talking to you in person since we both drove this distance to be here. And I already explained to you about, my joint pain and my disability. And I've already told you I was glad that we met today and that I'm not bored. And so why do you keep saying these things that you're saying to me? And he was like, well, I do need to go because I'm going to go in here and use the bathroom. And I'm just like... So is that what it was the whole time? You had to pee? I don't know. And so we part ways. And in my mind, I'm just like, it's frustrating when you explain something to someone and they still keep telling you what your thought process is. They keep telling you that you're bored or we're not getting anywhere. Like, what are you talking about? And he did contact me after that, and I'm like, okay, well, I was doing something. And he says, well, I'm at my cousin's house. Call me later if you can. So I text him, are you free now? And he's like, oh, yeah, you can go ahead and call me. I called him. He's at his cousin's house, loud music playing in the background. And I hear his cousin loud in the background, and he's talking loud on the phone. And then he's like, well, you know what, let's just talk another time because I'm at my cousin's house. And I'm thinking, you told me you was at your cousin's house when you said call you later if I can. So it's like, why tell me to call you when you're not available to have a conversation? At that point, I was done. It's challenging to have a conversation with someone when they don't actually listen to what you're saying. So if that person wants to fade out of your life, let them go. I'm now 51 years old. I've always liked having conversations, adult conversations, rational conversations, intellectual conversations. And when I meet someone who doesn't seem willing to do that, or if I'm constantly explaining the same thing in different ways, hoping they'll understand it, and they don't, it's like, do I want to keep talking to this person who either isn't comprehending for whatever reason, or they're just not really listening to what I'm saying, and who wants to be with someone who doesn't listen to what they say? So be comfortable with letting people go. And he faded out. I was okay with that. I'm all for relationships. I am. However, if there's something you want, such as intellectual conversations, you want to meet people, you want to do activities out in public, don't settle for someone that's like, oh, well, when do you want to come over and we can watch Netflix? I got Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, Tubi, Shudder. I can watch TV at home. Like, I don't need to drive an hour and a half to sit in somebody's house and watch TV. And when you tell someone the things that you would like to do with that person, or just in general, if they're not picking up on that, or they don't seem to have an interest in that, be okay with letting them go. Don't force yourself on people. Don't chase people. Don't try to convince people that, you're worth their time, because they're letting you know you're not even worth them trying to understand where you're coming from. That's basically what they're saying when they're not listening to you, or when they're telling you something that you did not say. So I'm going to leave this here. Leave your comments below if you've been in similar situations, or if this sparks any memories of people who came in your life and then exited your life, or if you tolerated that type of behavior from someone and then eventually it was just like, okay, I need to let this person go. This is just too much, or they're not giving enough type of thing. And so let's discuss below.